Welcome to Water in the Mojave. I am Racquel Henry, and I am the founder over at Writers Atelier, the organization that is helping to host this event for Jennifer and Heather. And I am so excited to see everyone here. We are excited to celebrate both Jennifer and Heather, who have upcoming books. And I'm just honestly so proud of them. I sort of watch them and admire them from afar. And it's really, really cool to be doing an event together with them. And, we went to the same program and everything. So I can't say enough great things about the two of them. So, and thank you all for showing up to support them as well. So we're actually going to have both Jennifer and Heather read some selected pieces from their books tonight, and I'm going to introduce them. However, we will have a section at the end with a Q&A from the audience. So if you all have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I think for this one, since it's a little bit of a larger group, we're going to just have everybody put them in the chat and keep themselves on mute. So if you haven't done so already, if you could just please mute your mic so that it stays quiet for the readers while they're reading and they're not, having any distractions. Feel free to keep your cameras on, though. We love seeing your beautiful faces, although I totally get it, because if I wasn't hosting, I'd probably have my camera off too. So I totally understand if you don't want your cameras on. But yeah, feel free to put those questions in the chat at the end. We're gonna go ahead and have them answer anything you want to ask them about the books or writing. I'm sure there's probably a limit on what you can ask, but feel free to put those questions in the comments. All right. So first up tonight, we have Jennifer Battisti. And Jennifer Battisti is a Las Vegas native. She was awarded Best Local Writer by the Readers of the Desert Companion in 2019. Her chapbook, Echo Bay, which I have, and it's really great, was released in 2018 by Tolsun Books. Her work has appeared in or is forthcoming from Where We Live, an anthology of writing and graphic arts in response to the October 1st tragedy, Western Humanities Review, Slant, Thin Air Magazine, Co-Review, The Briarcliff Review, Black Fox Literary Magazine, Desert Companion, Helen, a literary magazine, El Portal, Kissing Dynamite, and elsewhere. Her poetry has been on exhibit in the Nevada Humanities Program Gallery and the Nevada State College Program Gallery. She is the co-director of and a teaching artist for the Alzheimer's Poetry Project in Clark County. And if you want some more info about Jennifer, you can go to her website. It is jenniferbattisti.com. And I will go ahead and put a link to that in the comment section. So if anybody, maybe if the spelling might be, maybe you don't know how to spell it and such, I'll put it there. I'll also put a link to Jennifer's book, Off Boulder Highway, which is coming out from Tolsun Books. I'll put a link to that as well. All right. So Jennifer, welcome. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Racquel. It's so wonderful to see so many familiar faces and new faces and everybody's names. So many people came tonight. I'm really grateful for that. A huge thank you to Racquel for hosting us. And I'm really excited to be reading alongside Heather Lang-Cassera, my dear friend and a brilliant poet who has a breathtaking collection of poems coming out. So I will be reading from my forthcoming book, Off Boulder Highway, which is a hybrid full collection. So it has some poetry, memoir, and surrealistic prose. And it's being published with Tolsun Books. And David is here. Hi, David. And Brandy's here. Hi, Brandy. Brandy edited my book. She's a brilliant editor and also a dear friend. And so the book is largely about trauma, addiction, motherhood, and growing up in Las Vegas. So I'm going to just go ahead and start this first one. All right. This first one's called An Intervention. I've been in a walk-in closet for 3 days. Snug Harbor Weekly off Fremont, 2 blocks east of the Showboat Casino. Across the street, a mechanic squints at a dipstick all day. I forget who lives here, a blowtorch, a scab face sobbing, an empty fridge. Before something disappears, after something begs, my parents find me, bang down the door, bring me into the sun like a rotting smell. The blue flame of my tongue hisses. Spitting beetles hatch from my mouth. At home, my mother weeps and spot treats a stain on my shirt. This is before there are television shows for these sorts of things. My father exhales cigarette smoke, then asks me if I'm trying to kill myself. Predictably, I mutter, would it matter? My older sister shakes out my shoes, fishes through my pockets. I am denied privacy in any bathroom. They intervene. My cries are boomerangs. My mother passes out bottles of peach, clearly Canadian, my favorite when I was 12. This is before the treatment center with the mounted speakers, simulated oceans trapped inside. My father doesn't believe in treatment centers. My father is unconventional. He believes in Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. He believes in the harmony of math and the elegance of the open road. Someone gets my father a map. Choose, he says, anywhere you want to go. I move my shaky finger northbound from the ragged southern tip of Nevada. My mother adds oxymorons to describe the road trip. Detox vacation. My sister volunteers to water the plants while we're gone. It's been decided. Before anyone thinks to check behind the battery pack of my Walkman, I choose Newport Beach, Oregon. The waves aren't fraudulent. Sea lions huddle in anguished heaps. We soak in a brine of silence at the Great Salt Lake. A crust grows under my withdrawal. Salinity plumps my throat. A blue horse bucks in a metal cage for 40 miles. Between Pocatello and Blackfoot, I sleep pressed to the car window. I dream we are migrating buffalo in search of the largest potato chip in the world. I learn more about russets than I know of love. We fish for farm-raised trout and throw every gasping mouth back. I remember my father's tackle box heart, its flashy lures, its crawdad charm. He baits my line, something tugs in me. Before we packed the trunk, no one thought to bolt the kitchen window or to hide my mother's jewelry, my father's gun, the mason full of silver coins. My sister calls to say they took it all, my junkie crew, Skippy, Barbie, Harvey, foam twitching at the corners of their lips. Before we make it anywhere near a lighthouse, a sand-choked clam, a salty bluff where something can leap, my father stops speaking. He turns the car around. The seam of his mouth stiffens into an antenna. He is giving up. My ribs are sunken. Everything moves in reverse. Things that blossom, blossom black and shrink. Chicken wire snaps the milkweed's throat. Once, when I was a child, my ace-up-his-sleeve father piled us all into the Plymouth at midnight and drove all night for the best baby back ribs in California. I had never seen a blooming onion. We were invincible, licking our fingers clean. In Idaho Falls, we run on fumes. At the pulsing Shiloh Inn sign, we trade in our stillbirth idea of recovery for 2 beds, 1 room, nothing deluxe, a shitty view of the Snake River. Whatever trust had been established is retracted. I am the gasping mouth thrown back. I am left alone only to bathe. I float in a garden tub like a shriveled liver. Obsession leaves a film on the basin. I shuck the back from the Walkman. I let the water run and run. The ribbon unbuckles. Batteries spring their husks. I unfold synthetic pollen from its pouch onto Shiloh Inn's letterhead. I check the door's lock and check the door's lock. I chop fat lines quietly, waking my intestines. I leave weak old confessions in black ink. I let the water run and run. My bones scrape every surface. Even the air leaves bruises. I lay down next to my sleeping parents in the dark, amphetamine coursing my mind into a coffin of hotel air conditioning and night sweats. In the morning, we eat continental muffins, powdered eggs. After my father still won't speak, the dirt twists under our failure. Every cow is a question, a manure prayer, a grazing grenade. Before granola bars bend in my mother's open purse, she does needlepoint with her mouth. Is this the place where 3 states kiss? The car fills with cigarettes and AM radio. My fingers reek of trout and backseat sweat. We wring out our hopes into gas station trash cans. We whiplash the useless atlas into a gust storm outside of St. George. For no reason I can victimize myself with, my father pulls off to the side of the road. He cocks the lens onto his Canon EOS and tells me to climb the roadside haystacks. He fills up the film with my vanishing, my roadkill eyes and misfiring smile, my hollow jeans and goth-proud hair. The sun kneels down behind our family. He says he has to catch it before it disappears. He says something is on fire, the inadequate earth under the sinking sun. I pose and tangle my teenage inferno into the stacks. Let him capture me in this light. The shutter intervenes. Something is burning, he says. It's me. Thank you. This next one is called How to Fail. Rescue the wrong dog at the right time or the right dog at the wrong time. Press the accelerator like you're smashing a scorpion. Don't let up. Just sign the paper, take the free bag of kibble. The moon is full or it is a crescent. He has freckles or else he is most certainly a Sagittarius, your weakness. Ignore your obligations. Fill the shopping cart with rawhide, Kongs, Thundershirts, the Furminator. Contemplate the Chuck It, a quality ball flinger makes for an agile pup. Raise the dead, blow the cobwebs from the Tempur-Pedic dog bed, expired glucosamine, peanut butter toothpaste, let your pheromones lead the way. If the peanut gallery tries to reason with you, desensitize them with a sweaty ham roll until your boyfriend, your mother, your boss heal. It will only make sense at 2 a.m. when your PTSD is lulled to sleep by his watchful drooling. You're returning somewhere to something unruptured. Fuck it all up. Put the brown mud on the school bus, your daughter in the harness. Find comfort in irony. He lifts his leg to every fire hydrant. Don't be so predictable, you silly hoot. If he snarls, bites, or triggers, you're getting closer. Google muzzle. It is too adorable a word to rattle your delusion. You are not alarmed. Perform voiceovers for the dog. He sounds like Chris Tucker with slobbery vowels. When your daughter asks if he could be her stepdad, crack up at that kid's wit. Tell her no, sorry, he doesn't wear pants. Roll all the windows down. You remember this is what you're good at. Forgetting the lint brush, canceling dates, dog park small talk, tummy rubs. When he finally remembers his new name, it will fall apart. You'll skin both knees, sustain a puncture wound while prying his jaws off a toy poodle. There are 17 different collars in your virtual basket. The prong, the choke, the martingale, Zinger 2000. You square your hips, peacock your chest. You're the alpha. A pack is growing up around you. At the manicure place, the technician looks at your filthy, scabbed up hands. He asks if you're in charge of the handiwork. The world flaps through your doggy door heart. Nothing adds up anymore. His webbed feet, those sheltered eyes, the fitful dreaming you called sleep grieving, where he whimpers and twitches, bunches the covers into a wad. There are no bad dogs, no bad girls, only broken skin, a broken system, a quarantine knot in your gut. Fail by hiding his empty dog bowls. Bury his milk bones in the bottom of the junk drawer. Roll all the windows up. Cry. Lean into fetchy theories. Albert Einstein once called quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance. But you believe your particles howled together in the same cage for 6 weeks, so you are leashed forever. Look up the words chomp, sting, weak, terrible, people, return, break, break, break. Bandage your hand, don't send letters. Avoid ads that end in positively and who rescued who. Sit, stay, ice your grief. Thank you. This next one is called Continuum. Vegas 91. Under the eaves of the 7-Eleven, whole galaxies are forming. Exodus and Doc Martens arrives, cloaked in hazy Pink Floyd replicated armor, indigo hair sprayed in the alley minutes before. Suicide Slurpees are straw-sucked at the speed of light, kaleidoscoping comets into throats full of futures that will not come. Girls with inky eyes take big gulps of adolescence as if it were bottomless. Mothers with cracked faces slip coins into video poker window seats, while toddlers wait with full diapers and dirty feet. We don't know anything yet. How most of us will not make it further than the distance of the day's supply. Our bodies celestial after 2 bong hits and a hot dog. We are still there, orbiting convenience like breakfast links on a turnstile grill, still shoplifting diet pills and zigzags, paralleled with our now existence. Sometimes a glimpsed bifold flashes back our reflection, prism in an open door, the sun slingshot into a fissure in the fabric of time, bent just so, the way a decade goes down like instant coffee. For a moment, we meet our juvenile selves, our potential still shelved like motor oil and no-dos, the continuum assembled later, after the blue blaze quasar devours our young lives. Thank you. This next one is called Give, Take. Your high school bus stop is kitty corner to a dive bar named Butch Cassidy's, where on most mornings, a stunned drunk will stumble out of the wooden doors and into the morning light, grumbling profanities at the "you got a lot of nerve, son," and the "fuck you smiling at" parked car. A smashed soda can rockets across the parking lot. Sometimes the drunk's words will graze your JanSport backpack like a frenzy of slurring bullets. But you're a duck and cover girl. A school counselor once said what you lacked in fortitude, you made up for in street smarts. This morning's drunk slobbers and screams into a broken payphone outside the on-call cash store. The school bus is the color of liver disease. It whines and huffs to a stop, then swallows you inside its cheap vinyl and informative decals. You get on, your studded smile and moody lipstick, a silver ring with a dead rose, thorns gripping your pinky. You get on only to get back off 2 stops later to meet your friend. The driver could care less, his acne scars and that terrible underbite. Your friend is hiding in her bedroom closet, pretending to already be on her way to school. You wait outside her apartment until her mother rushes by in blue scrubs. You and your friend walk all day, eat the city, ditch sophomore everything, cactus brambles, graffiti gutters, bargain thistle in the sun. A gust of swollen tumbleweeds cuts your legs. Your friend mends you with dirty jokes and Circle K napkins. She flashes you the red change dish she's swiped. Take a penny, give a penny, written in white cursive. Truancy is transformative, the way a blow pop begins with syrup and ends with bubblegum. You leave your open backpack in a dirt devil's wake, then run back to snatch it before the Mojave rocks it in her dusty cradle. When you show up, your mouths are full of grit, cinnamon red hots, thirst. You stand outside the house, smoothing out the feminine places. Your friend taps lightly on the garage door where a grown man lives. His mother upstairs, likely leaving vacuum marks in a living room that smells like the candle store at the mall. This is the deadbeat man who shares his milk jug weed, a gravity bong, he calls it. The man slices the jug at the belly, causing a slinky vapor to swarm in a half-full sink. His hair is matted in the back. The stealthy smoke reminds you of being sick as a child, mentholated love, a humidifier and your mother's worried wrist on your forehead. You inhale from the gallon's throat. The 3 of you lay in his unmade bed, forcing laughter into a whisper. He is shirtless in saggy sweatpants. You've never seen the man wearing a shirt or shoes. Jerry Springer comes on the TV just as he takes turns kissing you and then your friend. Time and choice become heady. Back at school, it's your 5th period elective, child development. Inside your backpack, a flower baby slumps in a tantrum of desert and neglect. So next I'm going to read a couple pieces from a longer piece that's about a series of explosions that took place at a chemical plant called PepCon, where they stored oxidizer for solid propellant rocket booster in 1988. So I'm going to read a couple pieces from that. This first one is unstable, highly flammable. For attention, I used to extinguish matches into a puddle on my tongue. Cartoon smoke clouds trailed off bar stools as I ignited like a pinball to damsel in distress the jukebox, shoot shitty pool, my strike anywhere legs draping a side pocket, bent over the same green felt that dresses the casinos in razzle dazzle. While waiting for taxis, I flicked cigarettes into sagebrush, taunting the next blast, expecting to see my dad pull up in the Impala, his smoky gray suit still pressed from the morning's hot iron. I wonder how much displaced glass still screams in the desert. In the morning, I'll be a chemical fallout, a crater 15 feet deep, 200 feet wide. But tonight, my body is a welding torch, and you have nowhere to go. Fremont is dripping in gelatin and streetwalkers. My mouth tastes like a white-orange fireball. Someday they'll turn me into the Valley Auto Mall, but tonight I am Shockwave. I crack your glasses with my smile, part your hair with my eyes. This next one is Foolish Notion. I wanted to be more than an interruption, more than an emergency breakthrough in a George Michael song. They said I'd go places, glean intergalactic, but instead I was a death dive through the Mojave, a silver bullet sent west, Vegas or bust, only to be squat bored in a leaky barrel. I would have liked to touch somebody, anybody, but Kalichi kicked in my teeth. The hysterics called me Red Dawn. The chemists argued over my flammability in courtrooms. I was a dream suspended. I offered no unearthly shift in perspective, no primetime Pepsi commercial fanfare. Instead, I was a dystopian Max Headroom joke, a dead ringer for a careless whisper. They said I'd be sticky, the adhesive under a Dare bumper sticker, the news sensation. For a while, I was fondled like Rubik's Cube. Then I was an oversight, nothing but a jolt in Reagan's afternoon nap. You'll remember my sizzle, how I nuzzled you with fumes, revealed my moody skull and crossbones. Later, I'll return as your teenage lungs, a charming spark plug, the gritty desert pinned in the sun visor of a stolen Chevy Chevette. And this next one is called Writing to You from Inside a Storm. Here is a softness in your face I know only from photographs. Your mother's cursive on the back, Hope Haven Hospital, 1953. A brick building, coquina bones, 4 limping willows in the courtyard, a doctor who slips on the brace, his atrophied eyes and copper breath. Someone takes a picture. You stare back at me through time and space 70 years ago, when your polio was still a question, a halved apple on a cutting board, bruising by the second. Your eyes are black and bedding, already leaving the body's beautiful obedience. This is the place. Punish the stubborn animal of your leg. Lift the fleshy timber of boyhood. Make something of 1,000 electric deaths seizing the hospital crib. Your mother brings you a toy Ferris wheel. 6 tiny cages tilt and flip, a metal prophecy. Outside on the lawn, your brothers imagine how you'll take new form, sweat and paperwork, something stitched or padded, iced, or maybe inflated by a stranger's mouth. Is it like drowning? They punch each other in the gut until they gasp. I heard once that grief hides in the lungs. They imagine pine cones are grenades, slingshot them toward your absence, harden their jaws, dig a hole with a branch, spit seal it shut. I am writing to you from inside a storm. Every day your memory becomes more clever. It lives on every surface. Even my dreams are viral. You strap the belts, practice a bolt and socket knee. A nurse pities you with licorice. You please them with your progress. You are 4 in this picture. You think only of the alligators at that roadside attraction, tonic immobility, the way a captive lizard, when pinned, will amuse onlookers with fainting, turning paralysis into a trick. Thank you. I'm gonna read a couple more. This is called The Acid Trip. We beat fast Eddie, fool us numb. Relief blurs the boulevard. He takes the hard right at White Cross Drugs at St. Louis Suites, where you forge the lease with a fake ID. You stay in school even after your parents leave you like a past due bill. You go to work, bake cookies at Mrs. Fields in the Boulevard Mall during the week, stomp on peanut shells Saturdays at the steakhouse. We are 16, so we say, this building looks like Melrose Place, aren't we chic? We smoke cigarettes over boiling pots on the stovetop. We say this is how it's done. We eat non-perishable foods, top ramen rectangles as persistent as tangled mangrove roots. We use forks stolen from Del Taco. We wear crop tops stolen from Susie Deals. We arrange garage sale towel racks in a near family. Corner boys bite their lips under the pulsing red needle of the stratosphere, while we spoon Love It custard past curfew. The pink neon off the showgirl video sign makes me hot like Heather Locklear. You leave an exotic tree frog too close to the bedroom window during your double at Lone Star. Under the ghetto sun, sticky amphibian melts and evicts under the four walls of its mock rainforest. After the LSD tab dissolves into catnip on our tongues, we coax out the tender stray inside our mouths. We yowl until the moon explodes, then inch by inch, two paws stretch out. The dumpster tabby moans under a rosemary bush. We bring her into the apartment. Her eye is crusted shut and dripping psychedelic. Her stomach hangs swollen and pissy with kittens. She labors for 6 hours. We hallucinate kittens twirling in the curtains, licking the grimy bathtub, swimming in the orange juice, tumbling in our socks. I roll and chase your tail. We always land on our feet. We purr the midnight hour madness, waiting for the glowing eyes of the heaving womb to propel 5 kittens from her body like wild dice in every corner. The last is trapped in the orb of the amniotic sac, dying under the bed. Your mother never peeled the skin from a grape, never bothered to quarter a single fruit to keep you from choking. We knife out a scream to settle our mother's claw-punched authority. You slip the sack from the baby like cellophane off a new pack of Marlboros. It curls like a wet fig in your hand. Its blind and helpless suckling makes you laugh wickedly. Tears are clinging to the sides of your eyes before free-falling down your cheeks. The sun comes up shotgun in a jalopy, cruising over the serrated mountains, 2 high beams without a driver. The mother cat turns away from the kitten, rejecting our human scent. We name him Melrose and pass out on the balcony. When we wake, the hinges of our jaws flex at the slightest bell. We lap water to mend the grit on our tongues. We are matted and hungry, pressing our bodies into any moving object, as old as feral strip felines, as young as milk teeth swallowed whole. And I'll read one more, and then I will pass it along. This last one is the title poem, Off Boulder Highway. The hose water stung young lips, a hot plastic surge into our mouths. Later, we'd take heavy swallows off a 40-ounce the same way, until there was no space left to take in air. The electric boxes were brownstone stoops, only with reproductive repercussions. What did we know? Our asses burning each night on the green altar of our adolescence. If the Cuban boys liked you, they'd feed you fatty pork ribs you'd eat with both hands. Scoop bathtub jungle juice into red Solo cups 2 at a time. They'd tag your name in block letters on block walls with flames rising off the top. It's like a force that could take you out of the neighborhood. The nearby power plant umbrellaed us, a galvanic nanny, zipping, cracking, and humming an electric lullaby. But the houses were no bigger than a tight fist, ceilings low enough to catch flung whiskey, leaving a stain, an ink blot I'd confuse with love. My sister was the queen of the radio station, requested Def Leppard all summer long while tanning on the front lawn in chairs that opened like love notes slipped in lockers. Hysteria like a compass bearing, east side our true north. We'd circle the same zip code like chained dogs, get 86 from Nevada Palace just to get our Polaroid on the casino wall. Cross streets that crossed our names off every list, our roots growing like ash cylinders on GPC cigarettes. At Christmas, we'd hang tinsel on real trees bought from the carnies and desert lots, tobacco dip fringing their grainy tongues. They give discounts on the ones with dead patches. At night, we'd build fires at Frenchman Mountain, French kiss until we could no longer remember our address. We'd look down on the city, the strip a line I'd snort up my nose for a decade straight. When we ran out of pot, we'd hyperventilate on purpose, then press palms on each other's ribs until the black gauze wrapped us in absolute quiet, until there was no space left to take in air. The slump then sees a proof of our residence inside our own bodies. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody being here. I'm going to pass the virtual mic back to Racquel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was so good. Oh, you can probably just scroll through the chat if you wanted to and see all the great comments. I loved it. And that line about icing your grief, that's gonna like stick with me. And I don't know about anybody else, but I can't wait to get my hands on a copy of your latest title. And just as a reminder, I put the link in the comments if you all would like to pre-order Jennifer's latest title from Tolsun Books. The link is in the bio, or sorry, in the comments. I'm so used to saying link in bio for Instagram. So next up we have Heather Lang-Cassera, and I'm super excited to welcome you, Heather. I'm just going to read a little bit of Heather's bio here. Heather Lang-Cassera is a Clark County, Nevada Poet Laureate Emeritus from 2019 to 2021. She was named 2017 Best Local Writer or Poet by the readers of Nevada Public Radio's Desert Companion. She holds a Master of Fine Arts in Poetry with a certificate in Literary Translation from Fairleigh Dickinson University, yay FDU. And Heather serves Nevada State College as a lecturer teaching creative writing, college success, and more, where she is also a faculty advisor for the Writing Club and the literary magazine 300 Days of Sun. She is the founder and editor of Tolsun Books and a world literature editor and literary critic with the Literary Review. Her poems have been published by Black Fox Literary Magazine, the Normal School, North American Review, Raleigh Review, and South Dakota Review, among many other publications. Heather's forthcoming book of poems, Gathering Broken Light, written with the support of a Nevada Arts Council project grant, is available for pre-sale through Unsolicited Press. And if you would like to find out more about Heather Lang-Cassera, you can go to heatherlang.cassera.net. And I will be including a link to Heather's website and also to the Unsolicited Press website where you can purchase her upcoming title, Gathering Broken Light. Heather, welcome.
Thank you so much, Racquel.
You're
How's
welcome.
everyone doing?
We're all good. I think everybody's just on mute.
I get it. Jennifer was absolutely amazing. And I could just sit here and sort of like ruminate on all of that incredible literature that we just heard for the next hour, 2, 3. So thank you so much to Racquel Henry and her Writers Atelier for hosting us. I do really hope that you will head over to her website and check it out because the services that she offers are truly incredible. She's helped me proofread my creative work. She offers tons of guidance about publication and inspiration and really just no matter where you live. So she lives in Florida and I live in Nevada. And it's just, you know, it's like we're right here next to each other regardless. So yeah, so check her out and check out her amazing studio. And thank you to Jennifer for reading to us tonight. And congratulations on your forthcoming book. Everyone at Tolsun is so excited. And thank you to each of you for being here with us. It just means a lot that you're here to share this moment with us as we do a pre-launch reading for our 2 titles. So can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. All right. So Gathering Broken Light is dedicated to those most affected by the tragic events of October 1st, 2017, the shooting at the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival. Poetry, like other art, can be a way to explore and perhaps to work to try to cope with or to try to understand what we will never quite understand. In some ways, the beauty and the severity of our Mojave Desert resemble grief as a reflection of deep love and also the pain that can accompany subsequent absence. And so accordingly, I will start with a few poems from the forthcoming collection that seek guidance through our Southern Nevada landscape. The prickly pear flickers, silent in the late heat, with flame-like petals, snapshots of moment, supergiant stars as the sky has fallen and settles to the coral red floor of our still, raw earth. Some things are meant to be seen, not touched, never heard, and so we wait, confronting pasts we cannot understand, futures that can only be wrongly predicted. Nopales wave us forward gestures of kindness when least expected, juxtaposed against the mountains, torn against deep blue and those that came before. Even this desert was once an ocean. The desert tortoise makes her way, not as if she could move mountains. She is the buttes and saddlebacks and is too perfect to be a fixed part of this dust-splashed earth. She swishes sand, leaving wing-shaped tracks, and on her back carries a detailed topographic map. The delicate lines, contours of relief, or manifestations of the gaps we fill with silence and other absent declarations. Together we hear the hearty hissing and guttural grunts, warning us to keep our distance. We thought the tortoise was a snake, but we learned even our palms, such unquiet basins, can ache. Can we talk about the clouds, you ask? In the sky, salmon meets fire orange against cyan blue, leaving small saguaro silhouettes, empty hands, or shadow puppets of cold toy guns. We trespass to find the blue diamond cholla when backlit are breathtaking, with small halos behind savior-like spines. Though rare, once found, they brim in numbers. There is something about a cactus that appears as a star, only from its aerial view, and as a globe only when young, and then with woolly contrails that appear with age, beneath thousands of cyan blue skies whispering, somehow, all of the season's names at once. Its ribs twisted after some years, and now I think of your floating rib, which will never be quite right. Because you didn't mean it when you promised you would rest and let it heal. The doctor explained that there are both true and false ribs, which might have been when you stopped listening. Today, when you turn, like the astrophytum we planted so many years ago, and you gasp, because something is now where it should not be. I cannot help but think of the barely rooted cactus, of our decades-old home, of the narratives we are built to create in these imperfect vessels. You tell me about the excitement of igniting a tumbleweed, and I think of a cage turned outward, protecting empty space within. I contemplate what we should do in a controlled environment, or not at all. Bring me all of your worst ideas. What I mean is, let's roll them all across this once ocean floor, beneath the clouded ripples of our sealess sky, and away. At night, the desert dusts itself off and century plants continue to bloom, slowly, like stars burn. How can we learn to abandon what has already left us? We keep secrets so well while the desert heat sinks unknowingly through us. Your hand a basin lifted up from the surf, brought skyward and emptied of rivers, of pond, of gravity. For this, a quiet kind of love. Promise me you will go on. Feel the percussion of tears, the moon as emptiness, traced and brimming with promise, because both can be true. With dreams being antlers we shed with whims outside of our control. With the fox's tufts of hair being silky pairs of beds. With an hungry, prayer-like ears, distant and open for broken ideas, once gorgeous. So one of the reasons that I felt so deeply compelled to write this collection was that, well, Las Vegans, my local community, continued and continue to feel the impact of this tragedy As I traveled out of state for work, recreation, and especially to attend poetry readings, I was unsettled by how few folks remembered or knew anything about what had happened, despite the event being the worst mass shooting in modern history. I'm not sure if this somehow relates to the global mindset about how what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, which can be problematic for our brilliant community of residents who live here and stay here, who call this home, or if this lack of knowledge or remembrance outside of Southern Nevada was for some other reason. But I am a believer in the role of poet as a sort of historian. And although I never want to force folks to revisit traumas to which they are near, I also don't believe that it serves anyone for an event to be forgotten in a way that a truth might be ignored. So these next three poems are written after David Becker's photographs for Getty News.
Was so surprised that like when I try to read
They
poems,
are ekphras.
Heather, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just 1 second. Could you unmute yourself for a sec? Sorry. Okay.
No worries at all.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're totally fine. Thank you for hosting. I adore you. So the next three poems are written after David Becker's photographs for Getty News Images. They are ekphrastic pieces that attend to discarded items at the concert grounds. I do want to note that these poems are darker. They are more difficult. They're more pointed than what I have previously read. So if you need to take a break, mute your audio, step away for a while, please know that I support you. I want you to take care of yourselves. So, the abandoned napkin is a collapsed cloud, which is to say we leave it behind. The sky has fallen and we cannot take it with us. The night exhaled, its lungs sunk into absence. Misshapen rooms light cannot enter. What might we wet with mothers' tongues to clean the paper-thin skin of messy babes' mouths while ring fingers capture tears, trace faces? Who in the Mojave has not caught drops of rainwater on the beds that live beneath the roofs of our mouths? Empty chambers which hold our breaths. The abandoned napkin is a collapsed cloud, a prayer that we can see until it isn't, a thought we hope to decipher before snuffed out. A small breath billows before it fades. The aluminum can is a failing telescope, which is to say we cannot go back. We see even Mars as it was 12 minutes ago. Another red-rocked place where we have gone in search of water. There are so many metaphors for oceans and for loss. The city lights whisper washes disguise the sky, slip man-made canopies over us, pretending to shelter us. The aluminum can is a failing telescope, one never tilted up and into this late night sky. A trampled cup is a deserted snow globe. It snows in the southern valley once a year, maybe a sprinkling. A friend writes about unexpected snow like spilled flakes of mashed potatoes. A food too warm, too comforting for spring, summer, and now fall. We are grateful the snow is not rain, that the weather anchor does not predict showers. A word that reminds us of bullets. A trampled cup reminds us of a snow globe, which reminds us of dreaming of a right Christmas. One before the summoning of ghosts. One before the faces washed pale by floodlights. One before the eyes wider than the mouths of Oh, Holy Night. These plastic edges look sharper than they are, but perception's foundation is memory, and yes, we remember. A turn of favorite paperback page reminds us of loss, a delicate paper cut carving a hidden crescent moon, or a passage to the needless harvesting of hearts. Of this trampled cup, desert sand has been swept inside, looking as if instead it is spilling out, extending itself across all the ends of the earth, which is to say, yes, we see the Mojave in your once hazel eyes. We have never owned a snow globe, never kept one on the shelf like a secret story to be told again and again. And we will never wonder what it might be like to hold something in the palms of one's own hands, to shake an entire world, while the stillness of the scene remains untouched, a narrative merely implied. So my next poem is composed of lines completely from an article in the Washington Post by Alex Horton, and it is titled, "The Las Vegas Shooter Modified a Dozen Rifles to Shoot Like Automatic Weapons." So these lines are arranged as a villanelle, which is, as many of you here know, a 19-line poem in which the first and third line of the opening stanza recur alternately at the end of the following stanzas. And I was intrigued by the idea of pairing phrases from the media with this repetitive poetic form of the villanelle, which might reflect sort of like the recurring gun violence in our nation and or the sometimes cyclical experience of trauma. In a frantic 9-minute window of intermittent gunfire, the barrels can reach several hundred degrees. Components used together in a weapon suggest a desire to shoot large amounts of automatic-like fire, turning orange and even blue as rounds travel thousands of feet. In a frantic 9-minute window of intermittent gunfire, Nevada law allows the purchase of machine guns and silencers, a meticulous collection of accessories. Components used together in a weapon suggest a desire. An AR-15 type rifle with a bump or slide fire. Automatic weapons used by the military have lever releases. In a frantic 9-minute window of intermittent gunfire, bounce or bump the weapon into the trigger finger. The bump fire mechanism includes a high capacity. Components used together in a weapon suggest a desire, which helps the shooter acquire, regulate the size of high capacity magazines. In a frantic 9-minute window of intermittent gunfire, components used together in a weapon suggest a desire. So in an interview for their website, my publisher asked me what I edited out of this book, like which poems I removed and why. And there's so much that I edited out. One poem that I removed specifically was a sonnet. And I did this because between the rhyme scheme and the iambic pentameter, the metrical foot, which feels most like our heartbeats, the form felt too neat and tidy. It felt too perfectly controlled for a collection that explores in part the complexity and the unpredictability of grief. So alternatively, I did include throughout the collection a number of ABCdarians. Yes, it is an ice cream truck in the background. And I have to ask if any of you have seen, I literally can't think of it, the show where the guy's in the ice cream truck and he's super scary. Mr. Mercedes. Anybody? Okay, well, you have to go look up Mr. Mercedes after this, because that's all I can think about when I hear ice cream trucks now. But okay, so I included throughout the collection a number of abecedarians in sort of a different kind of way. So the first word is the letter A, the second word is a B, the third is a C, so on and so forth. These are fractured syntactically, however, and yes, Aaliyah knows. I knew you would know, Aaliyah. It's based on the Stephen King novel. Okay, so these are little origin stories, and none of them make it entirely through the alphabet, and that's intentional because I wanted to sort of mirror the effects of large-scale loss. And yeah, so in an alphabet of grief, a brief chaos digs endlessly. Flamingos glisten half-heartedly. Intricate journeys kept landlocked. Maps never opened, papas quieted restless suns. Tsunamis unhinged. A baby coyote drinks eloquently. Fiery gills hum into jeweled knives like magnificent, never-ending, omniscient puddles quietly rambling. Stubborn tumbleweeds overturned. A buildable city dipped endlessly. Fireflies gave heed. Illuminated jars kept lonely. Marigolds nodded, overlooking pasts. Quietly resisting stoicism, trembling, unstoppable. So I'm going to close with a few other poems from Gathering Broken Light. Thank you so much for being here with me and for sitting with things that are difficult. Something that Jennifer and I have talked a lot about is how grateful we are for communities that will sit with us with the things that are harder to sit with, and sort of the healing effects of communities. So it means a lot to have you here. Beneath the gathering of leaves, by whom we do not know, we find a tear-stained something. This something in the leaves, in the heart of the woods, who are we to decide, finds itself, shifted back and forth by the ground squirrel with paws so delicate they might hurt, or by the sharp heaviness of hooves, those of bighorn sheep, but never by the clear wind which cannot gain strength beyond the gentleness of a breeze, here, in the dead of the joyful night. Married for now to this, a phrase so misunderstood. Oh, to be something that is undefined, to be something that is yet to be. I walk toward the hills and cannot remember your name. You warned me in the night I would forget the deepest angles, the sleep-swept octaves of your voice. What else have I capsized? I dog-ear pages to temper swollen verbs, phrases posing without shadow, moving forward without doubt. Our shared words now lifted like pollen skyward, becoming the stars. You deserve to be remembered. How can I keep hope-drenched moments between curled hands? In this moonlight, to pause, a perspective. We become something better and something less. This grief returning again and again. My mouth holds space for these lost words, as if a creature tender as the darkness might someday rest on the stillness of my tongue. Here in this body where our pale wrists have been underbellies bathing in everything we have ever done and undone. The hills behind our home are still. We watch them and we feel the snow-throbbing heart and the birch-white spines that sing from sharp, gentle spaces. Inside, we find galaxies within handfuls of carefully halved grapes, which we eat piece by piece, just before midnight. Remembering also the unknown tracks we followed at dusk, the ones we tried not to cover with our own. Tonight we wish for another small snowfall, one that will allow us to have, both new and again, what we held today, surrounding us tomorrow. And here's the last one for tonight. I have never known loss like longing. I took words and placed them on my tongue, a quiet catapult for what I cannot say. I think of your wrists but as city swans in pairs, dark with moonlight, and your ribcage, undiscoverable. Here I wait with ceramic bowl, clean and gray as shadow, between two hands, so that I might feel the something that is in emptiness. What are we without certainty? But the trees without hills are no less for their loneliness. And these promises rearranged, a wing unbroken, a softness not surrendered. Thanks so much, folks.
That was amazing. Heather, thank you so much. And the line that stays with me from your work, I've never known loss like longing. You all are so incredible. Thank you for sharing your work with us. I mean, just absolutely beautiful work. And also, I love listening to writers read because it just is so inspiring to me. And especially right now, I've sort of been going through a little bit of a rough patch with my own writing. Like I'm in a little bit of a writing rut, and I feel so inspired from tonight. So thank you all so much. At this time, we're going to ask the audience if they have any questions for Heather or Jennifer. You can ask about their books, and you can also ask them any questions maybe on writing if you have any. Just feel free to put that in the chat. I actually have a question while we wait for people to put stuff in the chat. Jennifer and Heather, what made you all come up with the title for this event? Because Heather pitched it to me and I was just like, oh my gosh, I love the sound of that. Like, it sounds awesome. So could you talk a little bit about that?
I'll say something. Thank you. And thank you, Heather. That was an absolutely stunning reading. Just absolutely brilliant. So the title, I actually was thinking of Heather's work. She talks a lot about water in the desert and how once the Mojave was an ocean. So there's a lot of that imagery already in Heather's work, but I like that. I thought about using it like as a juxtaposition. Typically, trauma, you don't think about things like humor or joy or healing, but both can exist at the same time. So that was my thinking of it.
Yeah, Jennifer and I were brainstorming. I don't even remember what I said, but then Jennifer said the title and I was like, that's it. So she's brilliant.
So we have a question here from Timothy. How do you relate your own experiences to the collective experience?
So I don't have a preference who goes first, Jenny. So first off, hi, Tim. It is so good to have you here. Tim is one of my dear friends from my MFA program, and my writing would not at all be what it is today if it weren't for his companionship, friendship, feedback. So I'm just really grateful to see Tim here. So this is maybe one of the most challenging questions that I asked myself as I wrote this particular collection, because I think it's a really delicate thing, because I know, how sometimes I know how I feel about certain things and in certain situations. And sometimes there's venues for talking about grief and trauma that occurs on a collective level, like things that happen after the Las Vegas shooting. And it's really a balance for me regarding sort of like docu-poetry or the types of research that I do when it comes to things this personal. Because the last thing I want to do is dredge up something that is difficult for someone who's even closer to a trauma than perhaps maybe I might be. And so something that I have done a lot of is researched what other poets and writers do and how they approach topics such as this. And one of the writers who I admire so much, maybe the most, is Leanne Roripa. I know some of you are familiar with her, but for example, she wrote the book Tsunami versus the Fukushima 50. And she did so much research in terms of reading everything and watching everything that she could get her hands on about the tsunami and how it affected the nuclear plant and the lives it destroyed, without being invasive to the people who have been most affected by that. And so for me, it's really a balancing act. And I still question how to approach those topics on a daily basis. Like earlier, Jennifer and I were talking, and I felt like I really needed to write this book for some of the reasons that I mentioned earlier tonight, but it still makes me nervous. So I think that that's an excellent question and something that I think I will be thinking about for the rest of my writerly life, the rest of my life.
I'll chime in. That's a really good question, Tim. Hi, Tim. And I think for me, a lot of what I write about, as far as my own trauma, has to do with like family dysfunction and addiction. So when I was younger, when I first started to read memoir, I was a teenager, and that was probably my first experience with that type of intimacy that you could have with a stranger, essentially, an author, and feel that sense of connection. So that always stood out as being very powerful. When I was 15 or 16, I read a memoir called Drinking a Love Story by Carolyn Knapp, and it was like somebody had been inside my spirit and my heart. And so that's one way that I connect to other people's grief or trauma. I'm also a part of several recovery groups. And so that's sort of the part of the structure and the function of 12-step groups, is to collectively talk about grief and trauma and things like that. And then even at work, I work in a spa as my day job. And so I get to have these really wonderful interactions with people for sometimes an hour or more, where, eventually they tend to open up, and then I open up. So I get to have these connections and find out more about the human condition. So I don't know if that's my take on it.
We have a question here from Joanna. Jennifer, I was, excuse me. Jennifer, I was intrigued by the connection between the biographical elements of your work and its connection to the historical moment. A TV show, a commercial jingle that gets stuck in your head, a Rubik's Cube, that's a tongue twister, etc. Would you mind speaking a bit more about how and why you connect the two in your writing?
Yeah, so I think that objects and pop culture get frozen in time along with our personal experiences, or at least that's how it works in my brain. And I think when talking about trauma, traumatized time is very circular and not chronological. But when I was going back and trying to source these memories, usually those were entry points. So music, especially music, can bring me deeper into a memory. It can conjure up details that I wouldn't otherwise remember. So after doing that a few times, it becomes sort of a tool to be able to source memories, to get the specifics down on paper. And And it's also another way to connect us collectively because we experience pop culture together. And so if I remember a song and then you have your own, I have my own experience of a song or a commercial jingle or things like that, you also have your own experience. But when I write about it or somebody writes about it, then we get to connect. So it's like even more impactful. So.
Whoops, I was talking and I was on mute. It happens once every time. Question from Sherry here. Do you both practice reading aloud on your own poems at home? I do, and just wondering about others. If you do as you write and practice ahead to read out loud to others.
Yeah, so the short answer is absolutely. I was a musician before I was a poet. I didn't actually fall into poetry until I was in my 20s, but I learned a lot of things about phrasing and meter and just all sorts of sonic qualities from playing the saxophone. And so for me, a huge part of poetry is about how it sounds and how it comes across in that way. And so for me, the only way I can experience that, especially during the revisions process, is by reading out loud to myself. So I'll write something, or sometimes honestly, I'll just be going out for a hike and I will write a poem by speaking it out loud and hitting record on my phone. So I have all sorts of ways that I approach it, but definitely reading the work out loud is a key part of my poetic process, and also like my fiction writing process and my literary nonfiction process. And then I will also just quickly say that I would encourage, it's something I do with my students too. So I just ask them to sort of like read things out loud, because you catch so many things, you know, you catch redundancies, you catch like awkward senses of diction that don't quite work. So yeah.
And I also definitely read poems aloud in the revision process typically. I think movement is important too. A lot of times I get the rhythm from a poem by being out in the world. So like doing yoga, walking, things like that, where I'm moving my body helps to create the rhythm, and then reading them aloud, and I record them and listen to them. And then you'll find out a lot about where a line break should be, if a word isn't working, all of that stuff from listening to it. Everything that Heather said.
I love that. Question here from Andrew. Somewhat related to the other questions, I see the work of both of you as being deeply rooted in material reality, i.e. the conditions in which we live, which I really admire. Is it important to you to reflect the world we live in when you write? And if so, how come?
So that's an excellent question. And thanks for all the great questions, everyone. Sherry, Andrew, I really appreciate these. So absolutely. For me, poetry is largely about exploring the world in which we live. And sometimes, well, also my experience of it. And for me, it's really a process of discovery of our world. So if I have an idea and I know exactly what my idea is, most likely then I want to write a short story or I want to write a literary essay. But for me, if I really want to explore something about the world, that's when I turn to poetry. So yes, absolutely. And that observation means a lot to me. So thank you for that, Andrew.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way that I interpreted the question, I definitely try and write from like concrete images. That's usually how poetry will begin for me, is I'll see something interesting or a lot of times bizarre and strange, which is, I think it's important to sort of like know what your obsessions are, because that's what you're going to be interested. You should write about whatever your obsessions are. And if you can get the concrete images to sort of describe and to use for comparison metaphors and things like that for the abstract world, then you're succeeding, basically.
This next question is from Joanna. Heather, I have a similar question for you and the way you connect color and nature to the physical body, as well as our emotional selves. Could you speak more about the connections you make between the human and the natural?
Yeah, I would be super happy to chat about this. Thanks, Joanna. So I think this relates a little bit to what Jennifer was saying in terms of like concrete language. So writing about the things that we can immediately sense with our five senses. And I geek out about this a little bit because there's science behind it. There's science to show that using concrete language actually activates your limbic system and makes you care in like a physiological way. It evokes your emotions in a way that makes you physically care about that thing. And so I think that, you know, so I love science. I get really excited. I know I'm a poet, but I was a veterinary technician for a while, and I really value and appreciate and geek out about the sciences as well. So I think that that's a little bit, that's important to me, like in terms of like craft or understanding how poetry works. I think about that. In terms of, Joanna, you mentioned color and nature to the physical body. So I think I have a little bit of like synesthesia, because like when I hear things, I will see certain colors, or like if I'm talking, like my different friends have different smells, like when they're just talking, like even on the phone, like I'll smell a certain kind of smell. So I think that for me, sometimes that's where a poem will start. Like I will hear someone's voice and then I will just like, what is my experience of that outside of the way that it sounds? And in terms of the connections between the human and the natural worlds, I guess I'm someone who I really like to do things that feel connected to not the material world, but to like our sensory experiences. So I think one of the reasons that I like poetry so much is even though it's something that might be sometimes like heady or more cerebral, it can still be very much about what we experience as human beings in bodies. And that's one of the things I struggle with sometimes. Like I've had jobs where I just have to sit in front of a computer screen all day long, like cubicle jobs way back in the day. And I really struggled with that because like, we're all human beings and we all have physical bodies. And like, I want to use my body, even if it's to like, you know, restrain a cat, or if it's to like get up with my students and go out and look at the art and write about it, things like that. So I don't know if that answers the question at all, but I think it's okay. Thanks, Joanna.
One more question here. David says, Heather, what benefits do you find when you use specific structures like a villanelle?
So sometimes I use structures like certain poetic forms simply when I have writer's block. Like if I don't know where to go or what to write, I will lean into a specific form. Sometimes I will take a form and if I have sort of like a sense of something that I want to explore and I think I know what form will match it, I will pick either a poetic form that seems to speak to that experience or one that seems completely opposite. So like when I think about the sonnet and that iambic pentameter that I mentioned earlier, the meter in there is literally our heartbeat. It's the same thing. It's the same sound, like the da-dum, like it's what our heart beats. And so when I think about like a love poem, I might try a love poem as a sonnet. But on the other hand, I might try something really dark and difficult and challenging as a sonnet to see what I can do with that juxtaposition, to see what kinds of like emotions or experiences can come out of that. And so I think that that is really helpful for me in exploring my understanding of the world. I also think that it's just a really great way to grow as a writer. So as Many of you know I'm also an educator. I am so incredibly fortunate to be a lecturer at Nevada State College, and I love it there. Like, I'm so grateful. But, you know, so I'm always like, I believe in lifelong learning. And I think one of the best ways to learn as a writer or in anything, but is to try things and to try them differently and to always learn and to grow. And so sometimes I'll try forms that do not feel natural to me at all, just to try to grow and learn something new.
I love that. Also, so I think that was the last question. If I missed your question, do feel free to just drop it there one more time, but I think I got everyone. One last question I have, though, I wanted to ask you both, because these are some heavy things that you're writing about. How do you take care of your mind? Because I'm really big on mindset work. I teach mindset work to writers and things. So I'm going to naturally ask a mindset question here. But how do you take care of your minds when you're doing or writing things that are so heavy? Because I imagine, I mean, there's a lot of weight you're carrying around while you're trying to get these poems, these stories, these collections out.
Thanks, Racquel. That's a really, really important question. Yeah, so there definitely has to be a separation between when you're working on this and how you refuel. So for me, I do a lot of meditation, and I choose. Sometimes I do guided meditation so I can get somebody else's voice in my head, because often it's a nicer voice to have in my head. And to take time to be out in nature also really helps. Free writing, I'm a big advocate for free writing every day. That's my writing practice. Is I do 10 minutes of just like a brain drain, and then it's sort of getting to know your own mind. Writing Down the Bones, which is a really amazing book. If anybody's read that she talks about that, like if you know your own mind, then there's really nothing to fear. There's really nothing to run from. So just understanding that how my mind operates and knowing what to put in it, and then being of service to others is also, I think, really important, to get out of my own stuff and help somebody else.
Yeah, that all makes so much sense to me, Jennifer. For me, a lot of writing about the heavy stuff it's the stuff that I'm carrying with me anyway. It's the stuff that I can't stop thinking about. And so it's sort of my way of processing it and getting it out and not holding it all inside, whether it's emotional or cerebral or whatever. Now, that said, a lot of what I write never sees my workshop partner's eyes. It never goes anywhere for potential publication. I really have to weed out like what was written for me only versus what might speak to someone else. But yeah, so for me, writing sort of is that way of like, I tend to only write about things that I am obsessed with or passionate about, or like I cannot stop thinking about. And so it's my way of like processing. But I will say that I think Jennifer articulated something that maybe she's like helping me better understand something about myself, but I also really love teaching and I really love publishing other writers' work. And so I think that that's like another way of stepping out and giving back and also getting out of like my own head when it comes to things, especially the more complex things that I like to write about. Yeah. And
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Racquel, are you going to include a link to your amazing studio? Okay, I just did it.
I always seem to forget about, you know, like the studio thing, right? Like I'm so busy making sure everybody gets the speaker stuff. But I wanted to say that again, you know, please you all check out both Jennifer and Heather's upcoming books. I cannot wait. I just want them now. I mean, just I feel so inspired by tonight, and I cannot thank you both enough for just sharing a little bit of your work and yourselves with us tonight. And I saw some of the comments. It looks like everybody really enjoyed your reading and all the information that you all shared with us. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I am always, my heart is so full when I see the literary community coming together, because that's what I love the most, is all of us getting together, supporting each other, because that's really what it's all about. I mean, we have to support each other, right? So thank you all so much for showing up tonight, for Jennifer, for Heather, and for literature in general. And I don't know if Heather or Jennifer would like to say anything before we close out. And also, just one more thing, we are going to post this. You probably have noticed that it's being recorded. We are going to post the video on our YouTube channel and all of our social media networks so that everybody can have access to it and share it out if they want to watch it, if maybe you missed it, or maybe, Heather, like you have students who might want to see it. We'll have that available later on. All right. Oh, yay. Yay, it was great seeing you all. I'm just reading the comments here. Heather, Jennifer, are you all good?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming. It means the world. And thank you, Racquel.
Yeah, thanks, Racquel. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Heather.
My pleasure. All right, everyone. Thanks again, and we'll see you around. Bye. Have a great evening.